The colonial mentality is something I meet every day. We are quite a separatist organisation. All of the activists in our organisation are women, and they're all women of colour. It's not that, actually it is probably that white women are not really invited, and men, non-coloured men are not invited either. There are quite a few trans people of colour, and this is probably the only forum where trans people of colour in Sweden today can organise without feeling their identity is the primary issue, that you can be an activist in, for example, questions that have to do with homophobia without always being aware of your colour and your specific gender identity. The colonial mentality it really annoys me when I meet, and I meet a lot women, men with immigrant backgrounds who refuse to see, who cannot see the racism they face in society, who think, I think this is especially true in society who considers themselves free, where you have an idea that you're in a society where anything is possible, that it is not true, and people do not see this. People with an immigrant background, non-white people do not see that it isn't true, that they are born into a position which will make everything more difficult for them in their lives, in their working lives, in their personal lives, and in their status in their political lives. I can't remember which order I put these in, so it'll be quite exciting to see what the next picture is. Ah, yes, we now have the optimal way of integrating migrants. This is a caricature. And yes, you see that the idea of one of the ideas behind integration, especially in Sweden and probably in Western Europe, is that immigrants have the obligation to become as like other Europeans as possible in order to integrate. I think for me this is the thought behind this picture. And why can I not be non-white? Why can I not be brown? And be proud of my brownness, be proud of my Muslim, Pakistani heritage, and still live in Europe and still feel that Europe is mine. This place, this space on earth is mine to do what I please. I'm not a guest in anybody else's house. Here's another picture of Elenima. She's an activist in our organisation. Actually, this she did without any planning or help on our part. She went round, dressed in the traditional Eritrean Muslim clothes, and interviewed men who were buying prostitutes. She talked to them. You can see how uncomfortable he's feeling. Actually, this is a politician, but she's interviewing him about prostitution, about how men buy women from outside Europe, non-white women. She also went around offering money to white men. It was they found it very provocative. Why would she give, what was it, 10 euro to a white man? It disturbed their idea of what the world was. They expected her to be inferior. And this act of refusing to accept this inferiority was provocative. This, I think, is, yes, I'm well aware of the enormous variation among Muslims. I'm not going to explain that. I'm going to talk quickly. I don't know how much time I have left. I have 10 minutes.
No, you have like 5 minutes.
5 minutes. Okay, I'm going to talk quickly then about who decides what racism is. This is, there's a Centre Against Racism in Sweden, and they've been ridiculed one of the examples was that they filed a complaint against an ice cream manufacturer. This isn't an actual ad, it's just a caricature of an ad, who made an ice cream lager black. 97.8% of the readers of one of the biggest newspapers did not think that this was racist. 97.8. Another example is that in one town, one kind of big town, Karlstad in Sweden, there is a quarter called the nigger quarter. And they filed a complaint against that and said this is a racist thing. There was an overwhelming majority who said that this is not a racist name. There were politicians who said that this is a part of our, if we start changing the names, we are destroying our culture, our history. And this is a part of the idea. We have to destroy the culture and the history that creates the system where non-whites are inferior to whites. You see, Anna Maria, that I'm absolutely nowhere near what I've written on my paper. Okay, if I have a few minutes left, I'll talk about the situation of undocumented migrant women and violence. Yes, Ain't I a Woman is the campaign we're running. And I've written quite a bit about how violence against undocumented migrant women manifests itself in Sweden, in Europe, because this is a very European problem. It's a problem for Estonia as well, and I heard the other day that in Estonia there are not a lot of migrants, and I think what you have to question yourselves is why there are not a lot of migrants, and why aren't they welcome to Estonia? We have three concrete demands on changes in legislation, and this is where we stop, because legislation is a structural violence towards the women that creates, as I said earlier, a dehumanization, an invisibilization of these women. They fall completely outside the rule of law. They have no rights in cases of violence. The first demand we have is that the Violence Against Women's Act, which is to protect women in society, takes precedence over the Aliens Act. The Aliens Act is a part of the, it's one of the strongest laws, would you call it, a part of the constitution in Sweden, you could say, so that a woman who's been denied the right to stay in Sweden, if she goes to the police because she has been subject to violence, she's been raped or beaten, either at home or on the street, or by a policeman or by her husband, has no right to have her case tested. She will be sent straight back to wherever she came from, to the country she came from. She cannot do anything. And men know this. Men know that they can do whatever they... And there are documented cases that I won't take up now of border guards, of policemen that take advantage and rape and sexually abuse undocumented migrant women because they know they can get away with it. The second demand we have is that the Aliens Act is clarified so that women's particular asylum reasons are taken into consideration. Because today everything is focused on the man. If there's a war in a country, the man's asylum rights may be accepted. What the authorities don't see is that a woman who is subject to being raped as a part of a war does not have that seen as a specific claim to the a right of asylum. And then the third demand is that undocumented women have the right to have a temporary residence permit during the period that there's a police investigation or a court case in the case of violence, in a case where she has been subject to some type of violence here, and the crime against her is prosecutable. so strange that this hasn't been put into effect yet, because it's a law that's already in place for women subject to sex trafficking, that they are allowed to stay in the country during this time, but other women aren't. And why? I mean, the only reasonable explanation is that they are ignored, because in effect it is ignored. It's an easy thing to put through, is because there is a very deep and obvious racism among politicians who ignore this, and the rest of the society that does not find this question a question of priority. This is roughly what I was going to say. This picture is made by a good friend of mine who wrote a book in Swedish that I'm going to translate, the handbook for empowerment for young feminists who meet sexism and racism in their activist life, I can say. And the idea of this picture is that we have, as feminists, an obligation to global solidarity and Mila, what is rättvisa?
Justice.
Justice, yes. And the idea that colonialism is here every day. It is here in our societies. Even in Estonia, which has been colonialized itself, there is a clear concept, a clear idea of white colonialism, which makes a white person feel superior, regardless of how hard you try. We try not to feel superior. There is so deeply ingrained, like the blue-eyed and the brown-eyed people, brown-eyed children. It is so deeply ingrained and so deeply reinforced by everything we meet in our day-to-day lives. That is what I was going to say today. Thank you very much. The time is exactly past. Everybody,
Thank you so much. Thank you.